The wedding invitation sat on Lena's kitchen counter for 3 weeks, growing more poisonous each day. Her ex-boyfriend was marrying someone else. Someone better, apparently. Someone who could give him what Lena never could. The ceremony was tomorrow, and she'd already RSVP'd yes in a moment of wine-fueled defiance she now deeply regretted. She couldn't go alone. She couldn't bear the pitying looks, the whispered conversations, the carefully constructed smiles that barely masked the judgment. So on a gray Saturday morning, Lena Hart walked into a coffee shop she'd never been to before and did something completely insane. She asked a complete stranger to be her fake boyfriend. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. Now settle in, because what happens next will restore your faith in second chances. The Maple Street coffee shop wasn't romantic. That was precisely why Lena chose it. The place smelled like burnt espresso and old pastries, with mismatched chairs that wobbled and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look vaguely unwell. A laminated menu advertised a breakfast special that appeared to be whatever the cook felt like making that day. The walls were painted an aggressive shade of yellow that might have been cheerful in theory, but mainly just hurt to look at for extended periods. It was perfect. No memories lived here. No ghosts of better days haunted these cracked vinyl booths. Lena sat in the corner farthest from the door, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't actually tasted yet. She'd been sitting there for 40 minutes, watching people come and go, trying to build up the courage for what she was about to do. Her phone lay face down on the table beside a wedding invitation that looked obscenely elegant against the coffee-stained laminate. Graham West and Isabel Montgomery request the honor of your presence. She didn't need to read it again. Every word was already carved into her memory, like a headstone inscription. The bell above the door chimed, and a man walked in, tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that needed a cut and a jacket that had seen better years. He had the kind of face that would be handsome if it weren't so carefully arranged into an expression of permanent wariness. A little boy followed him, maybe 7 years old, clutching a worn backpack shaped like a dinosaur. "Dad, can I get a hot chocolate?" the boy asked, his voice carrying that particular pitch of childhood that could shatter glass and warm hearts simultaneously. "Sure, Max. Go grab that table, okay? I'll order." Lena watched them without meaning to. The man's voice was low and rough around the edges, like he'd spent too many nights not sleeping enough. When he ordered black coffee and hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, he spoke with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to get through transactions quickly and leave. Something about that resonated. The man turned with 2 cups in hand, and his eyes briefly met Lena's. For just a second, she saw something flicker across his face. Recognition, maybe, though they'd never met. Not recognition of her specifically, but of something she was wearing like a second skin. That particular brand of exhaustion that came from holding yourself together when everything inside wanted to fall apart. He looked away first and headed to his son. Lena's hands tightened around her coffee cup. This was insane. This was beyond insane. This was the kind of thing desperate people did in romantic comedies, and those never ended well in real life. She should just go home, email Graham that she had food poisoning, and spend tomorrow watching bad television in her pajamas like a normal person dealing with emotional devastation. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister Maya. "You're still going tomorrow, right? Don't you dare back out. Show that asshole what he lost." Lena closed her eyes. Maya meant well. Everyone meant well, but none of them understood that showing up alone would be worse than not showing up at all. Graham's family had barely tolerated her when they were together. His mother had made it abundantly clear that Lena, a kindergarten teacher from a middle-class family, wasn't quite good enough for her son, the investment banker with a trust fund and a summer house in the Hamptons. And now Graham was marrying Isabel Montgomery, whose family made his look middle-class. Isabel, who was everything Lena wasn't. Polished, connected, and currently 6 months pregnant with the child Graham had always wanted. The child Lena couldn't give him. She opened her eyes and found herself standing up. Her body had apparently made a decision her brain was still arguing against. The man was helping his son with his hot chocolate, carefully positioning napkins around the cup like a splash zone perimeter. He looked up when Lena's shadow fell across their table, his expression shifting immediately to polite confusion. "I'm sorry to bother you," Lena said, and her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "This is going to sound completely crazy." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, his body language shifting into something more protective. His hand moved almost imperceptibly closer to his son. "I'm not a scammer or anything," Lena added quickly, realizing how this looked. I need help with something weird, and I promise it's not illegal or dangerous or anything like that." "Dad?" The little boy looked up with wide eyes. "It's okay, Max." The man's voice was calm but firm. He looked at Lena with an expression that was equal parts curious and cautious. "What kind of help?" Lena took a breath. "I need someone to pretend to be my boyfriend. For one day. 9 hours, Max. Tomorrow." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. The man stared at her. His son stared at her. Even the guy behind the counter seemed to have stopped moving. "You're right," the man said finally. "That does sound completely crazy." I know how it sounds, but I have a wedding tomorrow, my ex-boyfriend's wedding, and I already RSVP'd that I was bringing a +1, and if I show up alone—" She heard her voice starting to crack and pulled it back. "I just need someone to stand next to me for a few hours. No touching beyond maybe holding hands. No kissing, just presence." The man was silent for a long moment, studying her face like he was trying to solve an equation. "Why me?" "Because you look like someone who understands desperation," Lena said honestly. "And because you're here with your son on a Saturday morning in a terrible coffee shop, which means you probably don't have anywhere important to be. And because—" She hesitated. "Because I'm out of options and out of time. And you're the first person I've seen all morning who looks like maybe life has knocked you around enough that you might not judge me for asking." Something shifted in the man's expression. Not quite sympathy, but understanding maybe. The wariness didn't disappear, but it softened slightly around the edges. "That's a lot of assumptions about a stranger," he said. "I know, I'm sorry, this was a mistake." Lena took a step back. "Forget I said anything." "Wait." The man held up a hand. He looked at his son, who was watching the entire exchange with the fascinated attention children brought to adult weirdness. "Max, buddy, can you go pick out a muffin? Something with blueberries if they have it." "But I already had hot chocolate." "I know. Consider it a special Saturday." He pulled out his wallet and handed the boy a $5 bill. "Take your time, okay?" Max shrugged and headed to the counter, casting curious glances back at them. The man gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit. Explain this properly." Lena sat, her heart hammering. Up close, she could see the details she'd missed from across the room, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many late nights, the calluses on his hands that didn't match his otherwise professional appearance. "I'm Lena," she said. "Lena Hart." "Ethan Cole." He didn't offer his hand, but his posture had relaxed slightly from full defense mode to mere high alert. "I'm a kindergarten teacher, 29 years old. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment in the South End. I have no criminal record, no communicable diseases, and no secret agenda beyond trying to survive tomorrow without completely falling apart." The words tumbled out like confession. "My ex-boyfriend is marrying someone else. Someone better, according to his family. Someone who can give him everything I couldn't. And I made the stupid mistake of saying I'd be there because I wanted to prove I was fine, but I'm not fine. And showing up alone would be like admitting that to everyone who already thinks I wasn't good enough." Ethan was quiet, his dark eyes steady on hers. "Why not just skip it?" "Because I already said I'd go. Because if I don't show up, it proves everything his mother ever said about me being weak and inadequate. Because—" She stopped, surprised by the sting of tears. "Because I need to see it with my own eyes. That it's really over. That he's really chosen someone else. That I'm really done." "That's not weakness," Ethan said quietly. "That's closure." Lena laughed, but it came out wrong. "Is it closure if it destroys you?" "Sometimes." He took a sip of his coffee, grimaced at the temperature, and set it down. 9 hours, you said? The ceremony starts at 2. Reception probably ends around 11. I figure if we show up at 1:30, make an appearance, stay through dinner, and leave around 10:30, that's 9 hours. 9 hours of not being alone. 9 hours of having someone in my corner, even if it's pretend. What's the cover story? The question surprised her. What? If I'm your boyfriend, we need a story. How we met. How long we've been together. The details that make it believable. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. You can't just show up with a random guy and expect people to buy it without questions. Lena felt something flutter in her chest. Hope, maybe. You're actually considering this. I'm considering the logistics, Ethan corrected. I haven't decided yet. Across the room, Max was engaged in serious negotiation with the counter guy about the muffin selection, pointing at various options with the gravity of a UN peace talk. We could say we met at a bookstore, Lena offered. 3 months ago. You were in the education section. Maybe you work in education somehow? Close enough, Ethan said. I consult on educational programs. It wasn't quite a lie. Lena could work with that. So we met at a bookstore, started talking about teaching methods, and you asked me to coffee. We've been seeing each other since then, but we've kept it quiet because... She paused. Because you have a son, and we wanted to make sure things were serious before involving him. Ethan's expression flickered at that, something protective and fierce. Max isn't part of this. I know. That's why we'd say we haven't introduced me to him yet. It keeps the timeline believable and keeps him completely separate. Where's his mother? The question was so blunt it took Lena a second to process. What? If someone asks where Max's mother is, what do I say? Because people will ask. They always do. There was something raw in his voice that made Lena realize she'd wandered into territory that still bled when pressed. We don't have to talk about it, she said carefully. We can say it's complicated and leave it there. Nobody at this wedding cares about your life story. They'll be too busy analyzing mine. Ethan studied her for another long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, and turned the screen toward her. That's my calendar for tomorrow. Nothing until 5 p.m., when I need to be back to pick Max up from his grandmother's house. She watches him most Saturdays. Lena looked at the screen, then back at Ethan's face. You're saying yes? I'm saying I have the time. Whether I'm saying yes depends on a few things. He pulled the phone back. First, what are you offering to pay for this? The question shouldn't have stung, but it did. Of course this was transactional. What else would it be? I have $200, Lena said. That's about all I can spare right now. Ethan shook his head. I don't want your money. Then what? Information, he interrupted. Honest answers to honest questions. You want me to walk into a room full of strangers and pretend to be someone I'm not? I need to know who I'm protecting and why. The word protecting did something strange to Lena's chest. Okay, she said. Ask? Why did you really break up? Not the sanitized version, the real one. Lena's hands tightened around her coffee cup. I can't have children. Medically can't, and Graham wanted a family more than he wanted me. The words sat between them like broken glass. Ethan's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Did he know before? I found out a year into our relationship. We tried to make it work anyway. We talked about adoption, surrogacy, all the alternatives. But his family... She stopped, swallowed. His family made it very clear that biology mattered. Continuing the bloodline mattered. And eventually Graham started to believe them. Or maybe he always believed them and just hid it better at first. How long were you together? 4 years? Jesus. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. And tomorrow's the first time you'll see him since? We broke up 8 months ago. He started dating Isabel 6 weeks later. They got engaged 4 months ago. She's 6 months pregnant. Lena heard the bitterness in her own voice and hated it. So either he moved on incredibly fast or he was already moving on while we were still together. Either way, it's pretty clear I was the problem, not his desire for a family. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You know that's bullshit, right? Lena looked up, startled. The idea that you were the problem, Ethan clarified. That's bullshit. The guy who leaves someone after 4 years because they can't have biological children isn't a guy who was deeply in love. He's a guy who was following a script his family wrote for him. You weren't the problem. You just didn't fit the casting. Something in Lena's throat went tight. She'd heard variations of this from Maya, from her friends, from her therapist, but somehow, hearing it from a stranger, someone who had no reason to comfort her, no emotional investment in making her feel better, made it land differently. "Thank you," she managed. "It's just the truth." Ethan glanced over at Max, who was now carefully selecting napkins with the same serious focus. "My turn for honesty. Max's mother left when he was 2, walked out one morning and never came back. No note, no explanation, no contact since." Lena felt her chest constrict. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. We're better off, honestly. She was—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "She wasn't ready to be a parent. Maybe she never will be. But Max deserved better than someone who saw him as an obligation instead of a gift. He's lucky to have you." Ethan's laugh was short and dry. "Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. Single dad, demanding job, no backup except my mother, who's already doing more than she should at her age. I'm not father of the year material." "The fact that you worry about that means you probably are," Lena said. Their eyes met, and for a second the coffee shop seemed to fall away. Two people who'd been knocked down by life, sitting across from each other in a terrible coffee shop, recognizing something fundamental in each other's damage. Max returned with a blueberry muffin the size of his head, looking triumphant. "They gave me the biggest one," he announced. "I can see that, buddy." Ethan shifted to make room as Max climbed back into his seat. "You're going to share that with me, right?" "Maybe." Max took an enormous bite, then looked at Lena with frank curiosity. "Are you Dad's friend?" Lena glanced at Ethan, uncertain. "She's someone who needs help with something," Ethan said carefully. "We're talking about whether I can help her." "What kind of help?" "Grown-up stuff. Nothing exciting." Max considered this while chewing. "Are you nice?" The question, so direct and genuine, made Lena smile for the first time in days. "I try to be. I'm a teacher, so I work with kids about your age every day." "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I think dinosaurs are pretty great." "Do you know about the Spinosaurus?" "I know it's one of the biggest carnivores, even bigger than T-Rex." Max's face lit up like she'd just revealed classified information. "Did you know it could swim?" For the next 10 minutes, Lena listened to an enthusiastic lecture on prehistoric aquatic predators, and Ethan watched them both with an expression that cycled between amusement and something more complicated. When Max finally paused for breath and another bite of muffin, Ethan spoke up. "Max, I need to talk to Miss Lena about grown-up things for a few more minutes. Think you can handle your muffin solo?" "I'm 7, Dad. I can definitely handle a muffin." "Fair point." Max returned to his breakfast with the focus of a surgeon, and Ethan leaned forward, his voice lower. "Here's what I need from you if we do this. Complete honesty about who's going to be there and what I'm walking into. If your ex is violent, if his family is aggressive, if there's any chance this turns into something physical or dangerous, I need to know now." "Graham's not violent. He's just weak. He'll do whatever his mother tells him to do, which includes probably ignoring me completely. His mother, Charlotte, is the one you need to watch out for. She's got a PhD in making you feel small with a smile on her face." "I can handle that. What about Isabel?" "I've never met her. I've seen pictures. She's beautiful and perfect and everything I'm not." Lena heard the self-pity in her voice and hated it. "Sorry, I'm not usually this pathetic." "You're not pathetic. You're hurt. There's a difference." Ethan pulled out his phone again. "Give me your number. If I'm going to do this, we need to coordinate details. Story, timing, what to wear, how to handle different scenarios." Lena recited her number, and a moment later her phone buzzed with a text. "This is Ethan." "So you're really doing this?" she asked. "I'm really doing this." He stood gathering up Max's backpack. "But Lena?" "Yeah?" "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember this. You're asking me to pretend to be your boyfriend because you're strong enough to face something that terrifies you. Someone who's actually weak would have just sent a gift and stayed home. Give yourself some credit." Before Lena could respond, Max had hopped down from his chair, muffin crumbs decorating his shirt like medals. "Bye, Miss Lena. I hope Dad can help you with your grown-up thing." "Thank you, Max. Enjoy the rest of your weekend." "We're going to the Natural History Museum," Max informed her. "They have a new ichthyosaur exhibit." That sounds amazing. Ethan gave her a small nod, and then they were gone, the bell above the door chiming their exit. Lena sat alone in the terrible coffee shop, staring at her phone where Ethan's contact information now lived. She'd done it. She'd actually convinced a complete stranger to be her fake boyfriend for a wedding. This was either the beginning of solving her problem or the beginning of making everything significantly worse. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Ethan. "Meet me here tomorrow at noon. We need to run through details before we go. And Lena, wear something that makes you feel powerful, not pretty. There's a difference." She read the message 3 times, something warm and unfamiliar spreading through her chest. Maybe this wouldn't be a disaster, after all. The rest of Saturday passed in a blur of nervous energy and obsessive preparation. Lena pulled every dress she owned out of her closet, tried them all on twice, hated everything, and nearly called Ethan 4 different times to back out. She didn't back out. Instead, she called Maya, who showed up with wine and a critical eye. "Okay, walk me through this one more time," Maya said, sprawled across Lena's bed while Lena modeled yet another dress. "You asked a random stranger in a coffee shop to be your fake boyfriend, and he said yes? Just like that?" "Not just like that. We talked. He has a son. He understands complicated situations. Or he's a serial killer who saw an easy target." "He's not a serial killer. You've known him for 4 hours. I have good instincts about people." Maya snorted. "Your instincts told you Graham was a good guy, and look how that turned out." The words hit harder than Maya probably intended. Lena turned away from the mirror, blinking against sudden tears. "Shit! Lena, I'm sorry." Maya was off the bed immediately, pulling her into a hug. "That was a low blow. I'm just worried about you going through with this whole insane plan." "I have to," Lena said into her sister's shoulder. "I have to prove I can do this." "No, you don't. You don't have to prove anything to anyone." "Yes, I do." Lena pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You didn't hear the things Charlotte said to me at the end, about how Graham deserved someone who could give him a complete family, about how it was probably for the best that we found out about my limitations before things went too far, like I was a defective product that got returned before the warranty expired." Maya's face went hard. "I will fight that woman. I will literally throw hands at this wedding." Despite everything, Lena laughed. "Please don't get arrested at my ex's wedding." "Then tell me this fake boyfriend of yours is at least hot." Lena thought about Ethan, the sharp lines of his face, the wariness in his dark eyes, the way he'd looked at his son with such fierce protectiveness. "He's solid," she said finally. "Real, like he's been through enough that he doesn't waste time on bullshit." "So not Graham, who spent 40 minutes every morning on his hair. Definitely not Graham." Maya studied her for a long moment. "You know what? I think this might actually work. Not because you're going to convince anyone you're madly in love, but because you're going to show up. That's all you need to do. Show up, hold your head high, and prove that you survived him. And if I fall apart? Then you fall apart with someone in your corner instead of alone in your apartment eating ice cream in your pajamas." Maya grabbed the dark blue dress from the bed. "Wear this one. It makes you look like you could run a Fortune 500 company or overthrow a small government. Very, I'm doing fine without you energy." Lena took the dress, running her fingers over the fabric. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been this wise. You just never listened to me." They ordered takeout, drank too much wine, and Maya stayed over, falling asleep halfway through a movie while Lena lay awake, staring at the ceiling and trying not to think about tomorrow. At some point, her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Can't sleep either?" She typed back, "How did you know? Because I'm assuming you're like me. Worst case scenario brain kicks in around 2 a.m. What time is it? 2:17. Lena almost laughed. "You know me too well already." "What's your worst case scenario?" She thought about lying, offering something superficial, but he'd asked for honesty. That I walk in and realize I never mattered at all. That the 4 years we spent together were nothing to him. That I was just a placeholder until someone better came along. The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, then we make sure everyone in that room knows you matter, starting with you. How? By walking in like you own the place. by not apologizing for existing, by showing them that their opinions about you don't define your worth. Is that what you do? I try. Doesn't always work, but I try. Thank you for this. For tomorrow, for not thinking I'm completely insane. Lena? Yeah? You're not insane. You're brave. There's a difference. Get some sleep. We've got work to do tomorrow. The messages stopped, but Lena read them over 3 more times before finally turning off her phone. Somewhere across the city, a stranger she'd met that morning was trying to help her survive tomorrow. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Sunday morning arrived with aggressive sunshine that felt inappropriate for Lena's emotional state. She woke up to Maya already gone, having left a note on the kitchen counter. You've got this. Call me after. Love you. Lena showered, dried her hair, did her makeup twice, and arrived at the Maple Street coffee shop at 11:45, 15 minutes early because her anxiety wouldn't let her be late. Ethan was already there. He sat at the same table from yesterday, but he looked different. The scruffy jacket was gone, replaced by a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, tailored, expensive, the kind of thing that made you recalibrate your assumptions about someone. His hair was still slightly too long, but it worked now, adding an edge to the polished appearance. He looked up when she entered, and something shifted in his expression. You look, he paused, powerful. Lena glanced down at the dark blue dress Maya had chosen, suddenly self-conscious. Is it too much? It's perfect. You look like you could buy this place and fire everyone just for fun. That's the vibe we're going for? Absolutely. He stood, and Lena noticed he'd brought a leather portfolio. Sit. We have an hour to become a believable couple. For the next 50 minutes, they built their cover story with the precision of method actors preparing for a role. They established a timeline. Met 4 months ago, not 3. Bookstore meet-cute still worked, but they'd add specific details. The book he was holding, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, because it sounded impressive. The coffee shop where they had their first actual date, a place in Cambridge that no longer existed, minimizing fact-checking. The first movie they'd seen together, Dune Part 2, recent enough to be relevant. They quizzed each other on basic information. Ethan learned that Lena taught at Sunshine Elementary, preferred tea over coffee, despite current evidence to the contrary, had a sister named Maya who was a physical therapist, and once spent a summer backpacking through Ireland. Lena learned that Ethan had studied education and economics at Princeton, consulted for various educational programs, technically true, extremely understated, loved jazz music and old detective novels, and had lived in 7 different cities before settling in Boston. Allergies? Ethan asked. Shellfish. You? Penicillin. Favorite food? Thai. Yours? Italian, but good Italian, not chain restaurant garbage. Pet peeves? People who don't use turn signals. Yours? People who talk during movies. They were building intimacy through data, constructing a relationship from facts and figures like assembling IKEA furniture without instructions. Okay, Ethan said finally, checking his watch. Last thing, physical boundaries. What's acceptable and what's not? Lena felt her cheeks heat. Hand-holding is fine, maybe an arm around my waist if we're standing. Nothing beyond that. What if they expect us to kiss? Greeting kiss? Photograph kiss? That sort of thing? Lena hadn't thought about that. Could we fake it? Like, you kiss my cheek but make it look real from a distance? We can try. But Lena, if at any point you're uncomfortable, you give me a signal and we're done. No questions, no judgment. What should the signal be? I'll say I need air. If I say those exact words, I need air, that means we leave immediately. Deal. Ethan extended his hand across the table. Partners? Lena took his hand, feeling the calluses, the steadiness, the slight tremor that suggested he was more nervous about this than he was letting on. Partners? She agreed. They drove separately, but agreed to arrive together. Ethan followed Lena's car in his, a black Audi that was several tax brackets above her Honda Civic, and they met in the parking lot of the Riverside Estate, a mansion-turned-event venue that probably cost more to rent for a day than Lena made in 6 months. The parking lot was full of luxury vehicles, Mercedes, BMW, Tesla. A Bentley that Lena was pretty sure belonged to Graham's father. Breathe, Ethan said, appearing at her car door. Just breathe. This was a mistake. I can't do this. Yes, you can. He offered his hand. You've already done the hard part. You showed up. Everything else is just improvisation. Lena took his hand and let him pull her out of the car. He didn't let go. Remember, he said quietly, you're not the one who should be nervous here. You're the one who got out. You're the one who's living an authentic life instead of playing a part in someone else's production. Hold on to that. They walked toward the entrance, and Lena felt every eye in the parking lot turn toward them. Women in designer dresses whispered to each other. Men in expensive suits made quick assessments and looked away. Ethan's hand tightened on hers. Showtime, he murmured. And they stepped inside. The Riverside estate had been transformed into something from a magazine spread. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers catching afternoon light, string quartets playing Vivaldi in corners where marble statues posed like frozen guests. Everything gleamed with the particular shine that came from unlimited budgets and professional event planners who charged by the hour. Lena's stomach twisted as they passed through the entrance hall. She'd known this would be elegant, but she hadn't prepared for it to feel like walking into a museum dedicated to everything she'd never been able to provide. Easy, Ethan whispered, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. You belong here as much as anyone else. A woman in a headset and clipboard intercepted them immediately, her smile professional and utterly empty. Names, please? Lena Hart, +1. The woman scanned her list, made a small check mark, and gestured toward the garden. Ceremony begins in 20 minutes. The terrace overlooks the lawn seating. Cocktails are being served. Thank you, Ethan said smoothly, and guided Lena toward the terrace before she could freeze completely. The terrace was crowded with people Lena recognized. Graham's college friends, his colleagues from the investment firm, cousins and aunts and family friends who'd always looked at her like she was a temporary inconvenience. They clustered in groups, drinking champagne and laughing too loudly, their jewelry catching the sunlight like small explosions. Lena? Lena Hart? She turned to find Jennifer March, Graham's cousin, someone who'd always been polite in person and vicious behind closed doors, approaching with wide eyes and a smile that didn't reach past her collagen-enhanced lips. Hi, Jennifer. Oh my God, I didn't think you'd actually come. Jennifer's gaze swept over Ethan with the subtlety of a home invasion. And who is this? This is Ethan. Ethan Cole, my boyfriend. The word felt strange in her mouth, but Lena forced herself to say it naturally. Ethan, this is Jennifer March, Graham's cousin. Ethan extended his hand with easy confidence. Pleasure to meet you. Jennifer shook his hand while her eyes performed rapid calculations. Designer suit, good watch, posture that suggested either old money or complete indifference to new money. How did you two meet? Bookstore, Lena said, sticking to the script. 4 months ago. Ethan was looking for something in the education section, and we started talking. How romantic, Jennifer said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. And what do you do, Ethan? I consult on educational programs and initiatives, strategic development mostly. He delivered the line with just enough vagueness to discourage follow-up questions. And you? Oh, I'm in marketing, social media strategy for lifestyle brands. Jennifer turned back to Lena, her smile sharpening. 4 months? That's quite fast for you to move on. It's only been, 8 months since you and Graham? 9 months, Lena corrected, feeling Ethan's hand settle at the small of her back. Warm, steady, grounding. And yes, when you meet the right person, timelines become less important. Jennifer's eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise or disappointment. Well, good for you. I'm sure Graham will be happy to see you found someone. He was so worried about how you were handling everything. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Poor Lena, so heartbroken, so unable to cope. I'm sure Graham has more important things to worry about today, Ethan said, his voice pleasant but with an edge underneath. Like his wedding. Speaking of which, where should we sit? Jennifer blinked, clearly unused to being redirected. Oh, anywhere in the general seating. Family and wedding party are in the first few rows. Perfect. Enjoy the ceremony. Ethan guided Lena away before Jennifer could respond, his hand still at her back. "She's terrible," Lena muttered once they were out of earshot. "She's insecure and dealing with it by making other people feel small. Ignore her." Ethan grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter and handed one to Lena. "You did well there. Didn't apologize, didn't explain, didn't give her ammunition." "I wanted to punch her." "That's healthy, but probably bad optics for a wedding." Lena took a sip of champagne and immediately regretted it. Too sweet, too expensive, too much like everything else here that was designed to intimidate rather than welcome. More people approached over the next 15 minutes. Graham's college roommate, who'd always made uncomfortable jokes about Lena's wholesome profession. 2 women from his office who'd never bothered learning her name, but definitely knew all the details of their breakup. A distant uncle who asked Ethan about his portfolio before realizing they weren't talking about the same kind of investing. Ethan handled each interaction with the same calm efficiency, deflecting invasive questions, subtly steering conversations away from dangerous territory, and making it clear through body language alone that Lena was off limits for casual cruelty. "You're really good at this," Lena said during a brief moment alone. "At what?" "Playing boyfriend, making people uncomfortable when they try to make me uncomfortable." Ethan's expression was unreadable. "I'm not playing at the second part. I genuinely don't like watching people take shots at you." Before Lena could respond, a bell chimed, delicate, expensive, summoning guests to their seats like well-trained dogs. The ceremony setup was even more elaborate than the terrace. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an aisle carpeted in rose petals, an arch woven with flowers that probably cost more than Lena's monthly rent. The lawn stretched toward a lake in the distance, picture-perfect and completely impersonal. Ethan led them to seats in the back row, positioning himself on the aisle side, between Lena and the majority of guests, she realized, protecting her sightlines. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. The ceremony hasn't started." The string quartet shifted into something orchestral and significant. Guests stood. The wedding party began their procession. Bridesmaids in blush pink, groomsmen in matching charcoal suits, flower girls scattering petals with the seriousness of surgeons. And then Graham appeared. Lena's breath caught despite every preparation, every mental rehearsal. 4 years of her life stood at the end of that aisle in a Tom Ford tuxedo, looking exactly like the man she'd loved and nothing like him at all. His hair was perfect. Of course it was. Graham always made sure of that. His smile was confident, practiced, the same smile he'd used in hundreds of photographs. He looked happy. That was what hurt most. He looked genuinely, completely happy. Ethan's hand found hers and squeezed once, steady, present, real. The music swelled and Isabel appeared. She was stunning. There was no other word for it. Tall, elegant, her wedding dress a masterpiece of French lace and precise tailoring that somehow made her pregnancy look like a deliberate fashion statement rather than a biological reality. Her dark hair was swept up in some complicated arrangement that probably required 3 people in 2 hours to achieve. Diamond earrings caught the light. She looked like someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. Lena felt something crack inside her chest, not heartbreak exactly, but something older and deeper. The confirmation of every insecurity she'd carried through their relationship. Isabel was everything Charlotte West had wanted for her son. Everything Lena could never be. "Breathe," Ethan murmured, so quietly only she could hear. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're okay." Lena focused on breathing and on the solid warmth of Ethan's hand in hers. She watched Graham watch Isabel walk down the aisle. She saw his expression, awe, love, certainty, and realized she'd never seen him look at her quite like that. The ceremony itself was traditional, elegant, completely predictable. The officiant spoke about love and commitment and building a family together, that last part landing like a physical blow. Graham and Isabel exchanged vows they'd written themselves, full of promises about forever and growing together and creating a legacy. Creating a legacy. As if their child was an achievement rather than a person. Lena felt Ethan shift beside her, and when she glanced over, his jaw was tight. He'd caught the same implication. The rings were exchanged. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Graham kissed Isabel with the enthusiasm of someone playing to an audience, and the guests erupted in applause. "You're doing great,"
Ethan said as everyone stood. Halfway done. But they weren't halfway done. The reception was still ahead, and as guests filed toward the main house where dinner would be served, Lena felt her courage starting to fracture. The reception hall was somehow even more excessive than the ceremony setup. Round tables dressed in cream linens, centerpieces of white orchids and floating candles, place settings that included more forks than any human could reasonably need. A band was setting up on a stage at the far end, and an open bar gleamed with top-shelf liquor. Table 17, Ethan said, checking the seating chart. Far corner, away from the main action.
They found their table and discovered they were seated with other plus ones and distant acquaintances, people who didn't quite fit the inner circle but couldn't be excluded entirely. A couple in their 60s who turned out to be neighbors of Graham's parents. A woman who worked in HR at his firm. A guy who'd gone to prep school with Graham but hadn't seen him in a decade. No one Lena knew. No one who knew her. It should have been a relief, but instead it felt like confirmation. She'd been relegated to the overflow seating, the table for people who didn't matter enough to sit close to the bride and groom. Good, Ethan said quietly, reading her expression. Less scrutiny, more room to breathe. Dinner was served in courses, each one more elaborate than the last, each one accompanied by wine pairings and small cards explaining the dish's origin story. Lena pushed food around her plate and tried to focus on the conversation Ethan was having with the HR woman about education reform policies. He was good at this, she realized, not just at playing boyfriend, but at being genuinely interested in people. He asked questions, listened to answers, made connections between disparate ideas. The HR woman was practically glowing under his attention. Your boyfriend is charming, she said to Lena during a lull. How did you get so lucky? I ask myself that every day, Lena said, and was surprised to find she almost meant it. Ethan caught her eye across the table, and something passed between them, understanding maybe, or appreciation for how well they were pulling this off. The meal ended, and the band started playing. Graham and Isabel took the floor for their first dance, a romantic ballad that Lena recognized because it had been her and Graham's song first. He'd recycled it. He'd taken something that was supposed to be theirs and given it to someone else. Ethan's hand found her knee under the table. That's exceptionally shitty of him. You recognized it? You mentioned it yesterday when we were going through your relationship timeline. You said it played at the restaurant where he proposed. The fact that Ethan had remembered that small detail from their crash course preparation made Lena's throat tight. I'm okay, she said. You don't have to be okay. You just have to get through this. The father-daughter dance followed, then the mother-son dance. Charlotte West moved across the floor with Graham like she was accepting an award, her expression radiating triumph. When the dance ended, she took the microphone. I want to thank everyone for being here today to celebrate this beautiful union, Charlotte began, her voice carrying that particular upper-class accent that made every word sound like it was being judged for breeding. When Graham first brought Isabel home, I knew immediately that she was someone special, someone who understood what it means to be part of this family. Someone who could give my son everything he deserves. Lena felt the words like knives, each one precisely placed. Isabel comes from a family that values the same things we do: legacy, tradition, the importance of blood, and heritage. She understands that marriage isn't just about two people. It's about building something that lasts beyond ourselves, creating something permanent. Charlotte's gaze swept the room, and for just a second it landed on Lena. Some people are content with a simple life, but my son deserved more. He deserved someone who could stand beside him as an equal, someone who could give him a complete family, someone who shares our vision for the future. The message was crystal clear. You weren't enough. She is. Ethan's hand moved from Lena's knee to her hand, gripping hard enough to ground her, but not hard enough to hurt. Charlotte continued, detailing all of Isabel's accomplishments, her Ivy League degree, her family's philanthropic work, her dedication to continuing the West family line. Each achievement was another indictment of everything Lena had failed to provide. The speech lasted 7 minutes. Each one felt like an hour. When it finally ended and the guests applauded, Lena realized her hands were shaking. She started. Not yet, Ethan interrupted gently. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you leave right after that. Stay for 10 more minutes, then we'll go outside for air. Make it look like a choice, not a retreat. He was right. Leaving now would confirm everything Charlotte had implied. So Lena stayed seated, accepting congratulations from table mates who seemed oblivious to the subtext of Charlotte's speech, drinking water that tasted like humiliation, counting down seconds until she could escape without proving everyone right about her weakness. Ethan kept up conversation with the other guests, his hand never leaving hers, his presence a steady reminder that she wasn't alone in this. At 9 minutes, Graham appeared at their table. Lena's entire body went rigid. "Lena," he said, and his voice was exactly the same, smooth, confident, with that slight Boston inflection he'd picked up from his prep school years. "I'm glad you came." She looked up at her ex-boyfriend, at the man she'd spent 4 years loving, and found that he looked smaller than she remembered. Not physically, he was still 6 feet tall with the build of someone who had a personal trainer and time to use them, but smaller in some essential way. "Graham, congratulations." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "Thank you, He glanced at Ethan, clearly surprised to find Lena with someone. "I didn't know you were seeing anyone." "We don't share our lives anymore," Lena said. "This is Ethan Cole. Ethan, Graham West." The two men shook hands, and Lena watched something interesting happen. Graham, who'd always been confident to the point of arrogance, seemed to shrink slightly under Ethan's steady gaze. Ethan didn't posture or puff up. He just stood there, solid and certain, and somehow that was more intimidating than any aggressive display. "Lena and I met a few months ago," Ethan said pleasantly. "She's been patient with me learning about her world." Her world? Graham's confusion was genuine. Teaching, early childhood education, the work she does with kids who come from difficult situations. Ethan's tone was conversational, but there was steel underneath. "It's remarkable, watching someone dedicate themselves to making a real difference in individual lives rather than chasing abstracts like legacy and bloodlines." The barb landed. Graham's expression flickered. "Teaching is certainly noble," he said carefully. "Lena always did have a big heart." "She does," Ethan agreed. "One of the many things I admire about her." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Graham shifted his weight, opened his mouth, closed it again. "I should get back to Isabel," he said finally. "But Lena, I'm glad you're okay." The patronizing concern in his voice made Lena's teeth clench. "I'm better than okay," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Graham nodded, clearly not knowing what else to say, and retreated back toward the head table where Isabel was holding court, with a group of women who all looked like variations of the same designer template. "Can we go now?" Lena asked quietly. "Absolutely." Ethan guided her through the crowd toward the French doors that led to the gardens. No one stopped them. No one seemed to notice them leaving at all. Outside, the air was cool and clean after the overheated reception hall. Lena walked until they were far enough from the building that the music was just a distant murmur, then stopped by a stone fountain that burbled peacefully in the darkness. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For his mother's speech, for making you witness that, for dragging you into this whole nightmare." "Lena, look at me." Ethan waited until she met his eyes. "That woman's speech told me everything I need to know about why you got out and why he wasn't worth keeping. She's a bully in expensive pearls, and her son is exactly the same kind of bully in a designer suit. You're not the one who should be apologizing." She basically announced to 200 people that I was inadequate. No, she announced to 200 people that she's cruel and small-minded. Anyone with half a brain in that room understood what she was really saying. Ethan's jaw tightened. "And the fact that Graham stood there and let her say those things about you, let her weaponize your medical condition as a character flaw, tells me he's worse than I thought." "He didn't mention me specifically." "She didn't have to. Everyone who knows your history knew exactly who she was talking about. That whole speech about some people being content with simple lives and my son deserving someone who could give him everything, that was a targeted attack designed to humiliate you in public while maintaining plausible deniability." Lena felt tears building and tried to blink them back. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry here. "Hey," Ethan's voice softened. "You want to know what I saw in that room?" "What?" I saw 200 people performing wealth and status like it's a substitute for actual human connection. I saw a groom who's more in love with the idea of having everything he's supposed to want than he is with his actual bride. I saw a mother who treats her son like a project instead of a person. And I saw you, sitting there with more dignity and grace than anyone in that room deserved, refusing to let them break you. I'm broken right now, Lena admitted, her voice cracking. You're hurt. That's different. Broken suggests you can't be fixed. Hurt just means you're still capable of feeling things deeply, which is the opposite of everyone in there who's numbed themselves with money and pretension. A tear escaped despite Lena's best efforts. Then another. Come here, Ethan said gently, and pulled her into a hug. It was the first time they'd embraced, and Lena was surprised by how solid he felt, how steady and warm and safe. She let herself collapse against his chest, let the tears come, let herself feel everything she'd been holding back since walking into this place. Ethan didn't rush her or tell her it would be okay or offer empty platitudes. He just held her while she cried, one hand steady at her back, the other cradling the back of her head like she was something precious that needed protecting. I thought I was over him, Lena said into his shoulder. I thought I'd moved past this. Seeing someone marry someone else 9 months after breaking up with you isn't about whether you're over them. It's about processing the fact that your entire relationship meant something different to him than it did to you. That's a fundamental betrayal, Lena. You're allowed to grieve it. Everyone in there thinks I'm pathetic. Everyone in there is too worried about their own insecurities to waste energy judging yours. Trust me, people who build their entire identities around status and appearance are always the most insecure. Lena pulled back enough to look at him, wiping at her eyes. How do you know so much about people like this? Ethan's expression shifted into something more guarded. I grew up around people like this, learned early that the ones who talk the most about legacy and bloodlines are usually compensating for not having much else to offer. But you said you're a consultant. I am. Doesn't mean I didn't grow up in a world similar to this one. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Difference is, I got out. Built something on my own terms instead of playing the part they wanted me to play. There was a story there, Lena realized. Something deeper than their quick coffee shop cover story construction. Before she could ask, voices drifted from the direction of the house, people coming outside to smoke or escape the noise. Do you want to stay? Ethan asked. Or do you want to do something radical and leave on our own terms? We can leave? Lena, you showed up. You faced him. You survived his mother's public character assassination. You've already done more than most people would have the courage to do. Staying for the cake cutting and bouquet toss isn't going to prove anything, except that you can endure unnecessary punishment. The idea of leaving, of actually walking away from this whole nightmare while it was still happening, felt both terrifying and intoxicating. What about everyone thinking, let them think whatever they want. You know the truth, I know the truth. The opinions of people you'll never see again don't matter. Lena looked back toward the reception hall where light and music poured through the windows. Inside, Graham was probably dancing with Isabel again. Charlotte was probably accepting compliments on her speech. Jennifer and the others were probably gossiping about how pathetic it was that Lena had shown up at all. Let's go, she said. You're sure? I'm sure. I've had enough humiliation for one day. Maybe for one lifetime. Ethan took her hand and they walked back toward the parking lot, not rushing, but not dawdling either. Lena half expected someone to stop them, to question why they were leaving early, but no one paid them any attention. They made it to her car without incident. Follow me, Ethan said. I know a place. What kind of place? The kind that serves comfort food at 10 p.m. and doesn't care about dress codes or designer labels or any of that bullshit we just escaped. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a 24-hour diner that smelled like coffee and bacon grease, still dressed in their wedding finery, eating pancakes and French fries like refugees from a war zone. This is perfect, Lena said, and meant it. This is real, Ethan corrected. That back there was performance art masquerading as a wedding. Why didn't you tell me you grew up around people like that? Ethan dragged a French fry through ketchup, considering. Because it didn't seem relevant, and because I spent a long time trying to distance myself from that world. I don't like admitting I came from it. But you clearly did well. The suit, the car, the way you handled everyone. That's not learned behavior. That's native fluency. My family has money, Ethan admitted carefully. Old money, the kind that comes with expectations and obligations and a very specific vision of what your life should look like. I was supposed to go into finance or law, marry someone from the right family, live in the right neighborhood, join the right clubs. Instead, I fell in love with someone they considered inappropriate, had a kid at 25, and watched my entire family turn their back on us when she left. Lena's breath caught. Your family abandoned you? They offered to take Max and raise him properly while I got my life back on track. As if my son was a mistake to be corrected rather than a human being who needed his father. Ethan's voice was flat, controlled. I told them where they could put their help, and I haven't spoken to most of them since. My mother comes around. She's the one who watches Max on Saturdays, but the rest of them treat us like we don't exist. I'm so sorry. Don't be. Best decision I ever made. I built my own company, raised my son my way, and I don't owe them anything, but it means I recognize people like Charlotte West and Graham and all those performance artists at that wedding. I know exactly what they value and how little it has to do with actual human worth. Lena reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you for today, for all of it, for being steady when I was falling apart, for saying the things I needed to hear, for getting me out of there before I completely lost it. You didn't lose it. You survived. There's a difference. I cried on your very expensive suit. Suits can be dry cleaned. Besides, it's not like I don't have others. He squeezed her hand. How are you feeling? Honest answer. Lena took inventory. Sad, yes. Hurt, definitely. But underneath that, something else. Something lighter. Free, she said finally. I feel free. Like I finally closed a door I've been holding open for 9 months. Good. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The diner's fluorescent lights harsh but honest after the soft romantic lighting of the reception. Other customers came and went, night shift workers, insomniacs, people whose lives didn't fit into neat 9-to-5 boxes. Can I ask you something? Lena said eventually. Always. Why did you really say yes? Yesterday at the coffee shop, why did you agree to do this? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in slow circles. Because I saw someone being brave enough to ask for help in a world that tells us asking for help is weakness. Because I've been where you are, needing someone in my corner and not having anyone to call. And because... He paused. Because Max liked you. In the 5 minutes you talked to him about dinosaurs, he lit up in a way he hasn't in a long time. Kid's a good judge of character. That's it? Your 7-year-old's approval? Don't underestimate the wisdom of 7-year-olds. They haven't learned to lie to themselves yet. Lena smiled despite everything. He's a great kid. He is, and he deserves better than watching his dad become bitter and closed off because one person walked away. Ethan met her eyes. Helping you felt like helping myself remember that not everyone is out to hurt you. Some people are just trying to survive their own damage. The words settled between them like a benediction. I should get home, Lena said finally, though she didn't particularly want to leave. It's late, and you need to pick up Max tomorrow. He's at my mother's tonight. Sleepover. I don't need to get him until noon. Oh. But you're right. It's late, and you've had a hell of a day. Ethan signaled for the check. Let me follow you home. Make sure you get there safe. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. They drove back through quiet streets, Ethan's headlights steady in Lena's rearview mirror. When they reached her apartment building, he walked her to the door. Thank you, Lena said again, because the words felt insufficient but necessary. For everything. For being exactly what I needed today. You needed someone who saw you. That's not hard to provide when you're actually worth seeing. Before Lena could respond, Ethan leaned down and kissed her forehead, gentle, brief, and completely unexpected. Get some sleep, he said quietly. And Lena? You're not broken. You're not inadequate. You're not any of the things that woman implied. You're someone who loved deeply and got hurt badly, and that takes courage most people will never have. He was gone before she could find her voice, back to his car, and driving away into the night. Lena stood in her doorway for a long moment, her hand pressed against where he'd kissed her forehead, feeling something shift inside her chest. Maybe survival wasn't the end goal. Maybe it was just the beginning. Lena woke up Monday morning feeling like she'd survived a natural disaster. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her phone had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages, most from Maya demanding details, a few from acquaintances who'd been at the wedding asking if she was okay, and one from a number she didn't recognize. She opened that one first. "Hope you got some sleep. Remember, you survived. Everything else is just noise. Ethan." Lena read it 3 times, something warm spreading through her chest despite the exhaustion. She typed back, "Thank you for yesterday, for everything. I owe you more than pancakes." His response came immediately. "You don't owe me anything, but if you want to buy me coffee sometime as friends, I wouldn't say no." Friends. The word should have been simple, but it felt loaded with possibility. Lena set her phone down and forced herself through the morning routine. Shower, coffee, getting dressed for work, even though her kindergarten class felt like the last thing she could handle today. But she went anyway, because staying home meant thinking about the wedding, about Charlotte's speech, about Graham's happy face as he'd married someone else. Her classroom was chaos as usual. 23 5-year-olds with infinite energy and zero volume control. But somewhere around mid-morning, while she was helping Emma Peterson sound out words in a picture book, Lena realized she was smiling, really smiling, not the performance version she'd worn for months. "Miss Hart, you look different today," said Marcus Chen, who had the observational skills of a detective and the tact of a sledgehammer. "Different how, Marcus?" "Less sad. You've been sad for a long time." Out of the mouths of children. Lena felt her throat tighten. "You're right, Marcus. I have been sad, but I'm working on being less sad." "That's good," he said seriously. "Sad teachers make learning harder." During lunch, Maya called for the 4th time, and Lena finally answered. "You're alive," Maya said dramatically. "I was about to file a missing person report." "I'm alive. I'm at work." "And? How was it? Did the fake boyfriend work? Did Graham die of jealousy? Did his awful mother choke on her own venom?" "It was—" Lena paused, trying to find words adequate to describe the previous day. "It was exactly as terrible as I expected, and somehow also not as bad as I feared. That's the least helpful summary ever. I need details. All of them. Tonight. My place. Wine and takeout. No excuses." "Maya, no excuses, Lena. You went through something traumatic, and I need to make sure you're processing it appropriately and not just pretending everything's fine." "When did you become a therapist?" "I've always been a therapist. You just never listened to me. 7 p.m. Be there." Maya hung up before Lena could argue. The rest of the school day passed in a blur of alphabet songs and playground disputes and snack time negotiations. When the last parent picked up the last child, Lena sat at her desk and finally let herself think about Ethan, about his steady presence, his careful protectiveness, the way he'd held her while she cried and didn't try to fix her. Her phone buzzed. Another text from him. "How was day 1 of post-wedding survival?" "Exhausting, but okay. 5-year-olds are surprisingly good at keeping you distracted from existential crises. Max has the same effect. Something about their complete lack of filter makes everything else seem less important." "How is Max?" "Convinced that dinosaurs could survive today if we just gave them a chance. Currently drawing blueprints for a dinosaur sanctuary in our backyard." Lena found herself grinning at her phone. "That sounds amazing. It would be if we had a backyard. We live in an apartment." Minor detail. That's what I told him. He's undeterred. They texted back and forth for another 20 minutes. Easy, comfortable conversation that felt nothing like the awkward small talk of dating apps or first dates. Ethan mentioned a problem he was having with Max's school, and Lena offered advice from her teaching experience. She mentioned being exhausted, and he sent her a recipe for what he called emergency comfort soup that was apparently just chicken noodle with extra garlic and a lot of hot sauce. It felt normal. After everything that had happened, normal felt miraculous. At 7 p.m. exactly, Lena showed up at Maya's apartment with wine and emotional baggage in equal measure. Her sister took one look at her and pulled her into a hug. "You look better than I expected," Maya said. "Is that a compliment?" It's an observation. I thought you'd be a complete disaster. Instead, you look like someone who survived a war and came out stronger. I don't know about stronger.
Tell me everything.
Over Thai food and cheap wine, Lena recounted the wedding, Charlotte's speech, Graham's concerned patronization, Isabel's perfect pregnant elegance. She told Maya about Ethan's steady support, his unexpected background, the way he'd gotten her out before she completely fell apart. And then he kissed your forehead and left? Maya's eyes were wide. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. It wasn't romantic. It was friendly, supportive. Lena, men don't kiss your forehead unless they care about you. That's an intimacy thing, not a friendship thing. We barely know each other. You spent 9 hours together pretending to be a couple. You cried on his suit. He threatened Graham with subtext. That's more emotional intimacy than most people get in 6 months of dating. Lena took a long sip of wine. He said we should be friends. Because he's being respectful. You just survived your ex's wedding. He's not going to push for more when you're vulnerable. Maya leaned forward. But Lena, the way you talk about him, the way your whole face changes when you mention something he said or did, that's not how you talk about a stranger you hired for a day. I didn't hire him. He wouldn't take money. Even better. He did this because he wanted to help you, because he saw you needed someone and decided to be that someone. Maya's expression softened. When was the last time someone did that for you? Just showed up and helped without expecting anything in return? Lena couldn't remember. Graham had always kept score, every favor owed, every gesture requiring reciprocation. His love had come with terms and conditions. I'm scared, Lena admitted. What if I'm just projecting because he was kind to me when I was desperate? What if this is just gratitude masquerading as feelings? Then you take it slow, you be friends. You figure out what's real and what's rebound. But Lena? Maya reached across the table and took her hand. Don't talk yourself out of something good because you're afraid of being hurt again. Graham didn't break you. He just revealed that he wasn't strong enough to love you the way you deserved. The words hit deeper than Maya probably intended. Lena felt tears building again. Not sad tears this time, but something more complicated. I don't know how to do this, she said. How to be open to someone new when the last person destroyed me. You do it scared. You do it messy. You do it one conversation at a time until it stops feeling terrifying and starts feeling possible. They finished the wine and most of the Thai food, and Maya made Lena promise to text Ethan, not to ask him out, but just to keep the conversation going, to see where it led without forcing it into a predetermined shape. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Lena would text Ethan something small, a funny thing a student said, a question about whether Max ever ate vegetables, a random observation about the weather. Ethan would respond with stories about Max's latest obsessions, questions about her teaching methods, or dry commentary about the absurdity of adult life. On Thursday, he sent, Max wants to know if you'd like to feed ducks with us on Saturday. No pressure, he's just convinced you're an expert on all animals because you teach kindergarten. Lena stared at the message for a full minute. This was different from texting. This was an actual invitation into his real life, into the space he shared with his son. I'd love to. Where and when? Boston Public Garden. 10 a.m.? There's a coffee cart nearby that doesn't serve terrible coffee, and Max has strong opinions about which ducks deserve the most bread. That sounds perfect. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Lena changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a sweater that Maya had declared approachable but cute. She arrived at the public garden 15 minutes early and spent the time watching families and couples and people walking dogs, trying to calm her nerves. This wasn't a date. This was feeding ducks with a 7-year-old. This was completely normal and not at all terrifying. Miss Lena! She turned to find Max running toward her, his dinosaur backpack bouncing, with Ethan following at a more reasonable pace. The sight of them together, father and son, both with the same dark hair and serious eyes, did something strange to her heart. Hi, Max. Hi, Ethan. You came. Max was vibrating with excitement. Dad said you might be busy, but you came. I wouldn't miss it. I heard you're the expert on duck feeding protocol. I am. You have to break the bread into small pieces because big pieces make them choke. And you have to make sure the little ducks get some too, not just the big ones who push everyone around. Those are very important rules. Ethan handed her a coffee, prepared exactly how she liked it, which meant he'd been paying attention to details she didn't remember sharing. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Figured you'd need fortification for the duck lecture. Max has thoughts." They walked to the pond, Max providing continuous commentary on every duck they passed. He knew their species, mallards mostly, but also some wood ducks and a few Canada geese who were trying to muscle in on duck territory. He had names for his favorites and detailed backstories for their interpersonal dramas. "That one's Gerald," Max said, pointing to a particularly aggressive mallard. "He's mean to everyone, but I think he's just sad because he doesn't have a family." "Maybe Gerald just needs someone to be nice to him," Lena suggested. "That's what Dad says. About people, too, not just ducks." Ethan caught Lena's eye over Max's head, something soft in his expression. They spent an hour feeding ducks and walking around the pond, Max darting ahead and back like a pinball, Ethan and Lena following at a slower pace. "This is nice," Ethan said at one point. "Max hasn't been this animated around someone new in a long time. Usually he's shy." "He doesn't seem shy. That's because you're good with kids. You make it easy for him to be himself. It's easy when they're genuine. Max doesn't perform. He just is. I'm trying to keep it that way. The world does enough to teach kids they need to hide their real selves." Ethan watched his son attempt to have a conversation with a particularly disinterested goose. His mother leaving messed him up for a while. He kept asking what he did wrong, why she didn't want to stay with him, breaking his heart over something he had zero control over. Lena's chest tightened. "How did you help him through it?" "Therapy, patience, letting him feel what he felt without trying to fix it or minimize it, and reminding him every single day that her leaving was about her inability to be a parent, not about his worth as a human being." The parallel to Lena's own situation wasn't lost on her. "You're a good father," she said. "I'm a trying father. That's the best I can manage most days." Max returned with a request for hot chocolate, which led them to a nearby cafe where they sat at a window table watching people pass by. Max detailed his latest school project, something involving volcanoes and excessive amounts of baking soda, while Ethan and Lena traded subtle smiles over his head. "Miss Lena, do you have kids?" Max asked suddenly, with that blunt curiosity that children wielded like weapons. The question landed like a punch. Lena felt her smile freeze. Ethan's hand moved under the table to her knee, steady, grounding, present. "No, buddy, she doesn't," Ethan said before Lena could find her voice. "How come?" "Because not everyone has kids. Some people do, some people don't. That's okay." "But she's a teacher. She'd be good at having kids." "Being good at something doesn't mean you have to do it in every part of your life," Ethan said gently. "Miss Lena teaches lots of kids every day. That's a different kind of important." Max considered this while drinking his hot chocolate. "Okay, but if you did have kids, they'd be lucky." The words were so sincere, so free of the loaded implications that usually came with discussions about Lena's childlessness, that she felt tears threatening. "Thank you, Max. That's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me." "You're welcome. Can I go look at the pastries?" "Stay where I can see you," Ethan said, and Max was off like a shot. Lena took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. I should have been ready for that question." "You don't need to apologize. And for what it's worth, he's right. You'd be an amazing parent." Ethan's hand was still on her knee, his thumb moving in small circles. "But you're also amazing exactly as you are. You don't need to be a parent to be complete." "Graham's mother would disagree." "Graham's mother is a miserable person who measures worth in antiquated markers of status and control. Her opinion is worth less than nothing." Lena looked at Ethan, really looked at him, at the careful way he watched his son across the cafe, at the shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many late nights and early mornings, at the quiet strength in the set of his shoulders. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Always." "Why did Max's mother really leave? You said she walked out, but people don't just walk out on their kids without a reason." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was choosing words carefully. "She never wanted to be a mother," he he said finally. We were young. I was 24, she was 23. The pregnancy was unplanned. I thought we could make it work, that love and commitment would be enough. But she started pulling away before Max was even born. Postpartum depression hit hard, and she refused help, refused therapy, refused to admit there was a problem. And then one morning when Max was 2, I woke up and she was gone. Left a note saying she couldn't do it anymore, that motherhood was suffocating her, that she needed to find herself. Did she ever come back? No, she sends money sometimes. Guilt payments, I guess. But she's never asked to see Max, never sent a birthday card. Nothing. Ethan's expression was carefully neutral, but Lena could see the old anger underneath. My family blamed me, said I'd chosen poorly, married beneath my station, and now I was paying the price. They offered to take Max and raise him properly while I got my life together, as if my son was a burden to be managed instead of a person to be loved. That's horrible. It clarified things, showed me exactly what kind of people they were and what kind of person I wanted to be. He looked at Max, who was pressing his face against the pastry case. I don't regret any of it. Not her leaving, not my family cutting me off, none of it. Because all of it led me here, to this life with Max, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Lena felt something shift in her chest. Recognition, maybe. Or solidarity. Two people who'd been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally, learning to build something new from the wreckage. I can't have children, she said quietly. Medically can't. I found out when I was 24, and it destroyed my sense of who I was supposed to be. Graham tried to be supportive at first, but his family never let him forget that I couldn't give him biological heirs. Eventually, he started to believe them, started looking at me like I was defective. You're not defective. I know that intellectually, but emotionally? She shook her head. Sometimes I still feel like I failed at something fundamental, like my body betrayed me and took away choices I didn't even know I wanted until they were gone. Ethan's hand tightened on her knee. The ability to have biological children doesn't determine your worth as a person or a woman. That's patriarchal nonsense designed to make people feel insufficient, so they'll conform to someone else's vision of what life should look like. You sound very sure about that. I am sure. Because I've watched my son thrive with one parent who loves him unconditionally instead of two parents who stayed together out of obligation. Family isn't about biology. It's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you every day even when it's hard. Max returned with reports of an everything bagel that looked like it had 1,000,000 seeds, and could they please get one? Ethan agreed, and they spent the next 20 minutes watching Max carefully distribute cream cheese with the focus of a surgeon. Miss Lena, do you want to come to the museum with us next Saturday? Max asked through a mouthful of bagel. They have a new exhibit about marine reptiles, like plesiosaurs and stuff. Lena glanced at Ethan, uncertain. You don't have to, Ethan said quickly. Max gets enthusiastic and forgets that people have their own lives. I want to, Lena said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Marine reptiles sound fascinating. Max's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Dad, she said yes. I heard, buddy. This is the best Saturday ever. After the cafe, they walked back toward the parking area, Max running ahead again to investigate interesting leaves and suspicious pigeons. Ethan walked beside Lena, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed. Thank you for today, he said quietly. For being patient with Max's questions and for sharing what you shared. I know that wasn't easy. It was easier than I expected. You make it easy to be honest. So do you. He stopped walking, turned to face her. Lena, I want to be clear about something. I'm not looking to rush into anything or pressure you into something you're not ready for, but I also don't want to pretend that this is just casual friendship when it's starting to feel like more than that. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. What does it feel like to you? Like the beginning of something real, something worth taking seriously and not screwing up. His dark eyes were steady on hers. But only if that's what you want too. If you need this to stay friendship, I can do that. Max and I both like having you around, whatever form that takes. I don't know what I want, Lena admitted. I'm scared of being hurt again. Scared of reading too much into kindness because I'm desperate for someone to see me as valuable. Scared that this is just rebound emotions disguised as connection. Those are all legitimate fears, and I'm not going to stand here and promise I'll never hurt you, because that's not realistic. People hurt each other even when they're trying not to, but I can promise that I'll be honest with you, that I won't play games or keep score or make you guess what I'm thinking, and I can promise that Max's presence means I'm not interested in anything casual or temporary. I don't bring people into his life unless I'm serious about them staying. How do you know you're serious about me? We barely know each other. I know you showed up to your ex's wedding because facing your fears was more important than protecting yourself from pain. I know you talked to my 7-year-old about dinosaurs like his interests mattered. I know you carry hurt like a weight you're used to bearing alone. And I know that every conversation we have makes me want to have another one. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, gentle, careful, giving her every chance to pull away. That's enough to start with. The rest we can figure out together. What if I'm too broken for this? Then we'll be broken together and figure out how to build something anyway. I'm not looking for perfect, Lena. I'm looking for real. And you're the most real person I've met in years. Lena felt tears building again, but good tears this time. Hopeful tears. I want to try, she said. I'm terrified, but I want to try. Then we'll try, slowly, honestly, with no expectations except showing up and seeing what happens. Okay. Max came running back, oblivious to the moment he'd interrupted. Dad, can we get ice cream? Max, it's November. It's 40 degrees outside. Ice cream doesn't have a season, Dad. You told me that. I'm regretting that lesson now. Ethan looked at Lena, eyebrows raised in question. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in longer than she could remember. Ice cream sounds perfect, she said. They got ice cream, ridiculous flavors that Max chose with the seriousness of a wine sommelier, and sat on a bench watching boats on the pond while Max provided running commentary on which ones were definitely pirate ships in disguise. When it was time to go, Max hugged Lena goodbye with the unself-conscious affection of childhood, and Ethan walked her to her car. Next Saturday, he said, museum and probably lunch after because Max will be starving by noon. Next Saturday, Lena agreed. He kissed her forehead again, the same gesture from the wedding night, but different now. Intentional. Promising. Drive safe, he said. Lena drove home with the radio off, letting herself feel everything without trying to analyze or protect against it. Fear, yes. Hope, definitely. But underneath both, something steadier. Something that felt like the beginning of finding her way back to herself. Her phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Ethan. Max says you're officially his favorite person besides me and his dinosaur collection. High praise. She texted back, tell him he's in my top 5 too. Only top 5? I work with 23 kindergartners. The competition is fierce. Fair point. See you next Saturday. Can't wait. And the remarkable thing was, she meant it. For the first time in 9 months, Lena was looking forward to something instead of just trying to survive until tomorrow. It wasn't everything. It wasn't healing, but it was a start. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The week between duck feeding and the museum visit passed in a strange blur of normalcy punctuated by moments of surreal happiness. Lena found herself smiling at random times, while grading papers, while making coffee, while stuck in traffic. Her students noticed. Miss Hart, you're happy again, announced Sophie Rodriguez on Wednesday morning with the blunt assessment that only 5-year-olds could deliver without apology. I am happy, Sophie. Is that okay? Yeah, happy teachers are better. You let us have extra recess when you're happy. The entire class looked at her with sudden hope. Nice try, Lena said, but we're still doing math first. The collective groan was worth it. She texted with Ethan daily now. Nothing earth-shattering, just the small details of life that added up to intimacy. He sent her a photo of Max's latest drawing, which appeared to be a velociraptor driving a school bus. She sent him a picture of the chaos her classroom had devolved into during an art project involving way too much glitter. He complained about a difficult client meeting. She vented about standardized testing requirements that made no sense for kindergartners. It felt comfortable, easy, like something that had been waiting for both of them to be ready. On Friday night, Maya called with her weekly check-in. You sound different, Maya said immediately. Good different, like you remembered how to be a person instead of just surviving. I'm seeing Ethan and Max tomorrow. Museum visit. That's the third time this week you've mentioned them. Just saying. We're taking things slow. Slow is good. Slow means you're being smart instead of rebounding into something messy. Maya paused. But Lena, don't be so careful that you talk yourself out of something good. You deserve good things. I'm trying to believe that. Try harder. Saturday morning arrived with cold rain that threatened to cancel outdoor plans but was perfect for museum exploration. Lena met Ethan and Max at the Museum of Science, where Max was practically vibrating with excitement. They have a whole section on ichthyosaurs, he announced before even saying hello, and a life-size model of a mosasaur that's like 40 feet long. 40 feet, Miss Lena? That's bigger than my entire apartment, Lena said seriously. Way bigger. Mosasaurs were apex predators. That means nothing could eat them except maybe bigger mosasaurs. Ethan caught her eye over Max's head, his expression somewhere between amused and apologetic. He's been like this since 6 a.m. I've heard more about Mesozoic marine ecosystems than I ever needed to know. I think it's great. Passion for learning is exactly what we want to encourage. See, Dad? Miss Lena gets it. They spent 3 hours in the museum, Max leading them through exhibits with the confidence of a seasoned tour guide. He explained the difference between plesiosaurs and pliosaurs, demonstrated how sea turtles had evolved, and had strong opinions about which prehistoric shark was the most impressive. Not the megalodon, he insisted. Everyone thinks megalodon because it's big, but the helicoprion had a tooth whorl that was like a circular saw, way cooler. Lena found herself genuinely fascinated, not just by the information, but by Max's enthusiasm for sharing it. He didn't talk down to her or assume she knew less. He just wanted to share something he loved with someone who would listen. Ethan stayed slightly back, watching them interact with an expression that made Lena's chest feel tight. At lunch in the museum cafe, Max inhaled a grilled cheese sandwich while detailing his plans for a school presentation on marine reptiles. Ethan ordered soup and coffee, and Lena got a salad she barely touched because she was too busy listening to Max's elaborate presentation outline. You're good with him, Ethan said quietly while Max was distracted by dessert options. He's easy to be good with. He's smart and funny and genuinely interested in the world. He's also a 7-year-old who can be exhausting and demanding and occasionally throws tantrums about bedtime. All kids do that. It doesn't make him less wonderful. Ethan's hand found hers under the table, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. I'm really glad you're here. Me too. Max returned with a brownie the size of his head and announced that he wanted to see the butterfly garden before they left. They spent another hour in the humid greenhouse, surrounded by exotic flowers and dozens of butterflies that landed on visitors without fear. One landed on Lena's shoulder, bright blue wings with intricate black patterns. It likes you, Max whispered, like speaking too loud would scare it away. That's a blue morpho. They're from Central and South America. It's beautiful. Dad, take a picture. Ethan pulled out his phone and captured the moment. Lena standing perfectly still, the butterfly on her shoulder, Max beside her with wonder written across his face. Later, when Ethan showed her the photo, Lena would see something in her own expression she hadn't seen in months. Peace, maybe. Or the beginning of it. The butterfly eventually flew away, and they made their way toward the exit. In the gift shop, Max became fixated on a book about marine biology that was probably too advanced for him, but that he swore he could read with help. Please, Dad, I'll read it every night before bed, I promise. Ethan looked at the price tag and winced slightly, but he was already pulling out his wallet. You better actually read it, buddy, not just look at the pictures. I will. Miss Lena can help me with the hard words, right? The question was so casual, so full of assumption, that Lena would be around for future help with reading, that both adults froze for a second. If Miss Lena wants to, Ethan said carefully, giving Lena an out. I'd love to, Lena said, meaning it. We can have reading time. Maybe once a week? Max's face lit up like she'd offered him the world. Really? Like a book club, but just for us? Exactly like that. The rain had stopped by the time they left the museum, leaving the city washed clean and smelling of wet pavement. They walked to Ethan's car, Max running ahead to jump in puddles with the dedication of someone on a mission. "You don't have to commit to weekly reading time," Ethan said quietly. "Max gets attached quickly, and I don't want you to feel pressured." "I'm not feeling pressured. I want to spend time with him, with both of you." Ethan stopped walking, pulled her gently aside while Max was distracted by a particularly large puddle. "Lena, I need to tell you something." Her stomach dropped. "Okay." "I wasn't completely honest about what I do, about my job." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking nervous in a way she'd never seen. "I don't just consult on educational programs. I own an education technology company, a pretty successful one. We develop learning platforms for schools, create curriculum resources, do teacher training. It's called CoreLearn Solutions." Lena blinked. CoreLearn was huge. She'd used their platforms in her own classroom. They were innovative, teacher-friendly, and according to industry news, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "You're the founder of CoreLearn." "CEO and founder, yeah." Ethan looked almost embarrassed. "I started it 6 years ago, right after my family cut me off. I wanted to build something meaningful, something that actually helped teachers and students instead of just making money. It grew faster than I expected." "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I wanted you to know me as just Ethan. Not Ethan the CEO, not Ethan with money, just me. The guy who's barely keeping up with single parenthood and who makes terrible coffee at home." He met her eyes. "And because I knew we'd be walking into a room full of people who judged you for not having enough money or status, and I wanted to expose how hollow all that was. How none of it actually matters when it comes to who someone is as a person." Lena thought about the wedding, about how easily Ethan had moved through that crowd, how comfortable he'd been in a world she'd always felt excluded from. "You were proving a point. I was proving that you belong there as much as anyone else. More than most of them, actually, because you've built your life on doing something meaningful instead of just accumulating status markers." He touched her cheek gently. "Are you angry?" "I don't know what I am." Lena processed this information, trying to reconcile the scruffy single dad from the coffee shop with a tech CEO. "It's a lot to take in." "I know, and I'm sorry for not being fully honest from the start. But Lena, everything else was real. The way I feel about you, the way Max has connected with you, all of it. That has nothing to do with money or companies or any of that external stuff. Miss Lena, Dad, come see this puddle. It's huge." They both looked at Max, who was standing in what was indeed an impressively large puddle, completely soaked from the knees down and utterly delighted. "We should probably rescue him before he's completely waterlogged," Ethan said. "Probably." They collected Max and his new book, and Ethan drove them to a nearby cafe that he promised had the best hot chocolate in the city. Max chattered the entire way about marine reptiles and puddles and whether butterflies got cold in the rain. In the cafe, while Max was in the bathroom, Ethan spoke again. "I understand if this changes things. If knowing about the company makes you uncomfortable or makes you question my motivations." Lena wrapped her hands around her hot chocolate, thinking. "It doesn't change things, but it does explain some things. Like how you could take a full day off on short notice, like the Audi and the tailored suit. I work from home mostly, which gives me flexibility with Max. The car and the suit are leftovers from when I thought I needed to look a certain way to be taken seriously." He smiled slightly. "Turns out competence matters more than appearance. Who knew? Your family must be furious that you succeeded without them." "My mother's proud, I think, though she'll never say it directly. The rest of them pretend I don't exist, which suits me fine. I built something on my own terms, raised my son my way, and I don't owe them anything." "That takes courage." "So does showing up to your ex's wedding. So does teaching kindergarten for modest pay when you could probably make more money doing something else. So does being vulnerable enough to let someone new into your life after being hurt." Ethan's dark eyes were steady on hers. "We're both braver than we give ourselves credit for." Max returned with wet hands and a request to sit in the booth seat by the window. They spent the next hour in comfortable companionship, Max reading passages from his new book with Lena's help, Ethan working through emails on his phone while periodically contributing to conversations about prehistoric marine life. It felt domestic, normal, like something Lena could get used to. As they were leaving, Max grabbed Lena's hand unselfconsciously. Can we do this again next week? Maybe the aquarium? Max, buddy, let Miss Lena have some time to herself, Ethan said gently. Actually, the aquarium sounds perfect, Lena said. I haven't been in years. Max squeezed her hand and did a little jump. Yes, this is the best day ever. In the parking lot, Ethan walked Lena to her car while Max climbed into his car seat. Ethan pulled her into a hug, longer than the forehead kisses, more substantial, the kind of embrace that communicated things words couldn't quite capture. Thank you for giving us a chance, he said into her hair. Both of us. Thank you for being patient with me figuring out what I want. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere. Lena drove home with her heart feeling fuller than it had in months. She was halfway back to her apartment when her phone rang, Graham's number flashing on the screen. She almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail and pretended she'd never seen it. But something made her pull over and accept the call. Hello, Graham. Lena, hi. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. He sounded nervous, which was unusual for someone who'd always been confident to the point of arrogance. What do you want? I wanted to apologize for my mother's speech at the wedding. For the way she talked about legacy and family and all that. I know she was referring to you, and it wasn't fair. Lena's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You're apologizing now? 2 weeks later? I should have stopped her. I should have said something right then, but He paused. I didn't know how to contradict her without making everything worse. You could have stood up for me. You could have told her that what she was saying was cruel and inappropriate, but you didn't because you agreed with her. That's not fair, isn't it? You broke up with me because I couldn't give you biological children. You started dating Isabel 6 weeks after we ended a 4-year relationship. You're having the baby you always wanted with someone your mother approves of. Everything she said in that speech was just acknowledging the reality you created. Graham was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I was weak. I let my family dictate what I should want instead of fighting for what I had, and I'm sorry for that. You deserved better. Yes, I did. I saw you at the wedding with that guy. You looked happy. Happier than I remember you being with me. The observation hurt more than Lena expected, probably because it was true. I'm finding my way back to happy, she said carefully. It's not easy, but I'm trying. He seems like a good guy. Ethan, right? He is a good guy. He's kind and honest, and he shows up for the people he cares about. The implication hung in the air, unlike you. I really am sorry, Lena, for all of it, for not being strong enough to choose you, for letting you believe you were the problem when the problem was always me and my inability to see past what my family wanted. I appreciate the apology, Graham. I do. But it doesn't change anything. You made your choice, and I'm making mine. I'm choosing to move forward instead of looking back. Fair enough. He sounded sad, but also resigned. Take care of yourself, okay? You too. And Graham, be better for Isabel and your baby than you were for me. They deserve that. She hung up before he could respond. For several minutes, Lena just sat in her parked car, processing the conversation. A month ago, Graham's apology would have meant everything. It would have validated the hurt she'd carried, confirmed that she hadn't been crazy to feel abandoned and diminished. Now it just felt like closing a door that had been left ajar for too long. She texted Maya. Graham called to apologize. The response came immediately. What? Call me right now. Instead, Lena texted Ethan. Thank you for today. Max is wonderful, and so are you. His reply. The feeling is mutual. Max is already planning next Saturday's aquarium adventure. Fair warning, he has a list. I'd expect nothing less. You okay? You sound off. Graham called. He apologized for his mother's speech. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before Ethan's response came through. How do you feel about that? Relieved, I think. Like I can finally let go of needing him to acknowledge that what happened was wrong. He did, and now I can move on. Good. You deserve to move on, with or without his apology. I know, but having it helps. Want company tonight? Max is with my mother until tomorrow. We could order takeout,
watch something terrible on TV, and not talk about exes or weddings or anything heavy. The invitation was casual, but Lena understood what it really meant. Ethan was offering comfort, presence, the kind of simple companionship that acknowledged hurt without dwelling in it. That sounds perfect. My place or yours? Yours. I'll bring wine and an open mind about what constitutes good television. 2 hours later, Ethan showed up at her door with expensive wine, cheap takeout, and a smile that made her apartment feel less empty. They ate Thai food on her couch and watched a nature documentary about octopuses that was equal parts fascinating and absurd. Ethan provided running commentary about how the octopuses were clearly smarter than most people he knew, and Lena laughed until her sides hurt. When the documentary ended, they stayed on the couch, not quite touching, but close enough that Lena could feel his warmth. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always." "Why me? Really? You could be with anyone. You're successful, kind, good-looking. You could find someone without all my baggage and complications." Ethan shifted to face her more fully. "I don't want someone without baggage. I want someone real. Someone who's been through things and came out the other side still capable of kindness and vulnerability. Someone who talks to my kid like he matters, and who chose a career helping children instead of chasing money. Someone who faced her worst fear at that wedding and survived it with more grace than anyone had a right to expect. I cried on your suit. You survived. The crying was just proof that you're human." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Lena, I've dated people who looked perfect on paper, people my family approved of, people who said all the right things and fit all the right criteria, and every single one of them was boring as hell because they were more interested in maintaining an image than being a person. And I'm interesting? You're fascinating, you're complicated and real, and you don't hide behind pretense. You say what you mean, you feel things deeply, and you're not afraid to be vulnerable even when vulnerability is terrifying. That's rare. That's valuable." Lena felt tears building again. Happy tears this time, grateful tears. "I'm falling for you," she admitted quietly, "and it scares me because the last time I fell for someone, it destroyed me." "I'm scared too," Ethan said. "Scared of screwing this up, scared of hurting you, scared of letting Max get attached if this doesn't work out. But I'm more scared of not trying, of letting fear keep me from something that could be extraordinary. What if I can't be what you need? What if you already are?" He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears. "Lena, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not asking you to have all your shit figured out. I'm just asking you to be here, be honest, and see where this goes. No expectations except showing up." "I can do that." "Then that's enough." He kissed her then, soft and careful, asking permission with every movement. Lena kissed him back, tasting possibility and hope, and the beginning of something neither of them had been looking for but both desperately needed. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I should probably go," he said, though he made no move to leave. "Early morning with Max tomorrow." "Okay. But I really don't want to go." "Then stay. Not for anything except just staying. We can watch another documentary or talk or just exist in the same space without it meaning anything except that we want to be together." Ethan smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. "That sounds perfect." They stayed up too late, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan told her about starting his company with nothing but a laptop and an idea. Lena told him about the student who'd changed her life by asking why she became a teacher. They discussed their worst dating experiences, their favorite books, their irrational fears and secret hopes. At some point, they fell asleep on the couch, tangled together in a way that would make their necks hurt in the morning, but felt exactly right in the moment. Lena woke up to early morning light and the sound of her phone buzzing. Ethan was still asleep, his arm around her waist, his breathing steady and peaceful. The text was from Maya. "You never called me back about Graham. You okay?" Lena typed back one-handed, careful not to wake Ethan. "I'm more than okay. I'm happy. Details immediately. Later. I promise." "But Maya? I think this might be real. It better be. You deserve real." Ethan stirred beside her,
his eyes opening slowly. Morning. Did we sleep here all night? Apparently. My neck is going to hate me. Mine too. He stretched carefully, then checked his phone. I need to pick up Max in 2 hours, which gives me just enough time to take you to breakfast if you're interested. I'm very interested. They went to a diner that served breakfast all day and sat in a booth by the window, both of them rumpled and happy in a way that made other patrons smile at them knowingly. Ethan ordered pancakes and bacon. Lena got an omelet and toast. They shared everything and talked about plans for the coming week. Max has a school thing on Thursday, Ethan said. Parent observation day or something. They want us to see what the kids are learning. Those can be really sweet. Parents get to see their kids in their element. Will you come with me? The question caught Lena off guard. To Max's school? Only if you want to, but he's been talking about you non-stop, and I think he'd be excited to show you his classroom. Plus, you're a teacher. You can help me understand what I'm supposed to be impressed by. Ethan, that's a big step. Meeting his teacher, being seen as part of his life in that way. I know, and if it's too much too soon, just say so. But Lena, you're already part of his life, part of our lives. Thursday would just be acknowledging that, officially. Lena thought about it, about walking into Max's school as someone important to him, about being introduced to his teacher and classmates, about stepping fully into this reality she'd been tiptoeing around. Yes, she said, I'd love to come. Ethan's smile could have powered the entire city. After breakfast, he drove her back to her apartment and kissed her goodbye with a promise to call later. Lena watched him drive away and then climbed the stairs to her apartment, feeling like she was floating. Her phone rang almost immediately. Maya. Okay, spill everything, and I mean everything, starting with why you sound like someone who just discovered happiness for the first time. Lena laughed and settled onto her couch, the same couch where she and Ethan had fallen asleep together, and told her sister everything. The week leading up to Thursday's school visit felt like standing on the edge of something significant. Lena found herself nervous in a way she hadn't been since the wedding, not anxious about being judged, but anxious about getting this right. Max mattered. His world mattered. And stepping into it officially felt like crossing a threshold she couldn't uncross. You're overthinking this, Maya said during their Wednesday night phone call. It's a school observation day, not a marriage proposal. But it's important to Max. What if his teacher asks who I am? What if the other parents judge Ethan for bringing someone new around his kid so quickly? First, Ethan is a grown man who can handle judgment. Second, you've been seeing each other for what, 3 weeks? That's not that quick when you factor in that you've spent almost every day together. And third, Max clearly adores you. That's what matters. What if I'm reading too much into this? What if Ethan just needs an extra adult for a school thing and I'm making it weird? Lena, the man fell asleep on your couch and then took you to breakfast. He introduced you to his mother last weekend. He's not being casual about this, and you know it. Maya was right. Ethan's mother had been warm and funny, with the same sharp eyes as her son and a directness that Lena appreciated. She'd hugged Lena goodbye and whispered, "He's happier than I've seen him in years. Thank you for that." Thursday arrived with cold sunshine and Lena's stomach in knots. She dressed carefully, professional enough for a school environment, but not so formal that she looked out of place. Ethan picked her up at noon, looking slightly stressed. Max has been talking about you coming all week, he said as she got in the car. Fair warning, he's probably going to introduce you to every single person in that building. I can handle that. He also might have told his entire class that his dad's girlfriend is coming. I tried to correct him, but he was very insistent. Lena's heart did something complicated. And what did you say? I said that you're someone very important to both of us, and left it at that. Was that okay? I didn't want to define something you're not ready to define. It's perfect. She reached over and squeezed his hand. And for the record, I don't mind if Max calls me your girlfriend. It's not inaccurate. Ethan's expression softened into something that looked like relief. Good, because I was hoping you'd say that. Max's school was bright and cheerful, with student artwork covering every available wall surface. They checked in at the office, got visitor badges, and made their way to the second-grade classroom. Max spotted them through the door window, and his face lit up like someone had handed him everything on his Christmas list. "Dad! Miss Lena!" You came! He launched himself at both of them with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever, and Lena caught him in a hug that felt natural and right. Of course we came, Ethan said. Wouldn't miss it. Max grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her toward his desk. I have to show you my science project. We're studying habitats, and I did mine on coral reefs because they're like underwater cities for fish and other marine animals. For the next hour, Lena and Ethan observed the classroom activities. Max's teacher, Mrs. Chen, was patient and creative, the kind of educator Lena recognized as genuinely caring about her students. The kids were engaged and excited, showing off their work to their parents with pride. During a break, Mrs. Chen approached them with a warm smile. You must be Max's father. I'm so glad you could make it today. Ethan Cole, and this is Lena Hart. She's a kindergarten teacher at Sunshine Elementary. Another teacher. How wonderful, Mrs. says. Chen's eyes lit up with professional kinship. Max talks about you quite a bit, Miss Hart. According to him, you know everything about every animal that's ever existed. Lena laughed. I think Max is giving me too much credit, but I try to encourage his curiosity. Well, whatever you're doing is working. He's been more engaged in class lately, more willing to share his ideas. It's lovely to see. After the observation, Max begged them to stay for recess, and they spent 20 minutes watching him play with his friends. One little girl, Clara, approached Lena with the boldness of youth. Are you Max's new mom? The question hit Lena like a physical blow. Before she could formulate a response, Max answered. No, she's my dad's girlfriend, but she's really nice and she knows about dinosaurs and she's teaching me to read big words. Cool, Clara said, apparently satisfied, and ran off to join a game of tag. Ethan's hand found Lena's, squeezing gently. You okay? Yeah, just... That was unexpected. Kids are direct. They don't understand complicated relationship definitions. I know, it's fine. Really. But later, driving back to Lena's apartment, the question lingered. Not uncomfortable, exactly, but present. A reminder that this wasn't just about her and Ethan. It was about Max, too, and what role she might play in his life. I can see you thinking, Ethan said as they sat in her living room with coffee. Talk to me. I'm scared, Lena admitted. Not of you or Max or this relationship. I'm scared of what happens if I let myself fall completely and then I can't give you what you need. What do you think we need? A family, a complete family. And I can't, her voice cracked. I can't give you more children. I can't give Max siblings. I can't be the person who makes your family whole in the traditional sense. Ethan set down his coffee and pulled her to face him, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes intense and unwavering. Lena, listen to me. Really listen. I don't need more children. I need someone who loves Max for who he is, not as a stepping stone to biological children. I need someone who shows up, for him, for me, for this messy, complicated life we're building. You've already done that. You're already enough. But what if you change your mind? What if 5 years from now you realize you want more kids and I can't give that to you? Then we adopt. Or we don't. Max and I are already a family. Anyone who joins us just adds to what's already there. They don't complete us. We're not incomplete. He cupped her face in his hands. You're not a solution to a problem, Lena. You're a person I'm falling in love with. The fact that you can't have biological children isn't a limitation. It's just a fact, like my eyes being brown or Max being obsessed with prehistoric animals. Graham made it feel like a deal breaker. Graham was an idiot who didn't deserve you. And I'm not Graham. I'm someone who watched his family abandon him because his life didn't match their expectations. I know exactly how poisonous it is to let other people's definitions of complete or successful or family dictate your choices. I won't do that to you, and I won't do it to us. Lena felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief rather than grief. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, and it terrifies me. Good. Being terrified means we're taking this seriously, means we understand how much it matters. He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then her lips, gentle and reverent. I'm terrified too, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone. They held each other for a long time, letting the confession settle into something solid and real. Over the next few weeks, Lena's life transformed in ways both subtle and profound. She spent Saturday mornings with Ethan and Max, aquarium visits, bookstore adventures, lazy breakfasts that stretched into early afternoon. She helped Max with his reading, celebrating each new word conquered like a personal victory. She met Ethan's mother for coffee and learned stories about Ethan's childhood that made her laugh and understand him better. She also started therapy, finally addressing the grief and inadequacy she'd carried since her diagnosis. Her therapist, Dr. Monroe, was direct and compassionate. "You've been defining yourself by what you can't do instead of what you can," Dr. Monroe said during their third session. "Your worth isn't determined by your reproductive capacity. It never was. I know that intellectually, but not emotionally, and that's the work, bridging that gap between knowing and believing." Lena did the work. She sat with uncomfortable feelings instead of pushing them away. She challenged the voice in her head that insisted she was broken or insufficient. She started to see herself the way Ethan and Max saw her, as someone valuable and complete exactly as she was. 2 months after the wedding, Lena and Ethan took Max to a Christmas tree farm. They spent hours searching for the perfect tree, while Max provided detailed criteria that seemed to change every 5 minutes. It has to be tall, but not too tall, and full, but not too full. And it has to smell really good, and it has to look friendly. "How does a tree look friendly?" Ethan asked, amused. "You just know when you see it." They finally found a tree that met Max's exacting standards, and Ethan hoisted it onto the car with Lena's questionable assistance. On the drive back, Max fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from tree hunting. "I have something to tell you," Ethan said quietly, his eyes on the road. "I got a call from my father yesterday. First time he's contacted me in 5 years. Spazio." Lena's chest tightened. What did he want? He heard about CoreLearn's recent expansion. Apparently success makes me relevant again. He wanted to have lunch, discuss opportunities for collaboration. Ethan's jaw was tight. I told him no. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. He reminded me that family is important, that Max deserves to know his grandfather, that I'm being stubborn and short-sighted. Ethan glanced at her briefly. Then he asked if I was still with that teacher, because if so, I should reconsider before making any permanent commitments. Lena's breath caught. He knows about me? Apparently Jennifer from the wedding knows someone who knows someone in my industry. Small world. Ethan reached over and took her hand. I told him that you're the best thing that's happened to me in years, and if he can't respect that, he can stay out of my life. Ethan, I mean it, Lena. I'm not interested in rebuilding relationships with people who only value me when I'm useful to them. I have everything I need. Max, you, my mother, a job I love. Everything else is optional. What if you regret cutting them off? I already cut them off 5 years ago. Yesterday was just confirming that decision. He squeezed her hand. You're my family now. You and Max. That's what matters. The words settled into Lena's chest like a benediction. Christmas morning arrived with snow and chaos. Max had spent the night at Ethan's apartment, and Lena arrived early to help with breakfast and present opening. Max attacked his gifts with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been promised everything he'd ever wanted, and Ethan watched with the exhausted satisfaction of a parent who'd stayed up too late assembling toys. Miss Lena, this one's for you, Max said, holding out a small wrapped box. Max, you didn't have to get me anything. It's from both of us, Ethan said, looking slightly nervous. Lena unwrapped the box carefully and found a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant, a tree with intricate branches. It's a family tree, Max explained. See? Dad said family is who chooses you, not just who you're born to. So you're part of our family tree now. Lena's vision blurred with tears. Max, this is beautiful. Do you like it? Dad helped me pick it out, but I told him which one was best. I love it. Can you help me put it on? Max carefully fastened the necklace while Ethan watched with an expression that made Lena's heart ache in the best way. After Max ran off to play with his new dinosaur set, Ethan pulled Lena aside.
There's one more thing, he said, pulling a small envelope from his pocket. This one's just for me. Inside was a key, simple, silver, attached to a keychain that said, Home. It's a key to my apartment, Ethan said.
You don't have to use it right away, or at all if you're not ready, but I want you to have it. I want you to know that you're welcome here any time, that this is your space too, if you want it to be. Lena looked at the key, then at Ethan, then at Max playing contentedly nearby. I want it to be, she said. I want this to be home. Ethan kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. The winter passed in a blur of domesticity and deepening connection. Lena kept her apartment but spent most nights at Ethan's, falling asleep to the sound of his breathing and waking up to Max's enthusiastic morning energy. She became a fixture in Max's routine, homework help, bedtime stories, weekend adventures. She and Ethan navigated the normal relationship challenges, disagreements about housework, different communication styles, the occasional clash of schedules, and came through them stronger. In March, Lena took Max to a parent-teacher conference when Ethan was stuck in a meeting. Mrs.
Chen beamed at her. Max has been thriving this semester. His reading comprehension is above grade level, and his enthusiasm for learning is contagious. Whatever you and Mr. Cole are doing at home, keep doing it. Thank you. Max makes it easy to encourage learning. He talks about you like you're a superhero, you know. Miss Lena says has become his go-to reference for everything from marine biology to how to be kind to others. The words stayed with Lena for days. She'd spent so long defining herself by what she couldn't be a biological mother, couldn't give Graham what he wanted, couldn't fit Charlotte's definition of acceptable, that she'd forgotten she could be something else entirely. She could be the person who showed up, who stayed, who loved without conditions or expectations. In April, Ethan took her back to the Maple Street coffee shop where they'd first met. Why are we here? Lina asked, looking at the same terrible yellow walls and cracked vinyl booths. Because this is where it started, where you were brave enough to ask a stranger for help and where I was smart enough to say yes. Ethan led her to the corner booth where she'd been sitting that Saturday morning. Sit. I have something to ask you. Lena sat, her heart suddenly hammering. Ethan sat across from her, and for a second they were just two people in a terrible coffee shop again. Except everything was different now. They knew each other, loved each other, had built something real from a desperate request and a surprising yes. Lena Hart, Ethan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. 6 months ago, you asked me to pretend to be your boyfriend for 9 hours. And I said yes because I saw someone being brave enough to face their fears instead of running from them. Because my son liked you. Because something in me recognized something in you. Max popped up from behind a nearby booth, grinning wildly. Hi, Miss Lena, surprise! Max, buddy, you were supposed to stay hidden until I got to the good part, Ethan said, but he was smiling. This is the good part. Can I do my part now? Go ahead. Max ran over and grabbed Lena's hand, his 7-year-old face suddenly serious. Miss Lena, you're the best person who's not my dad that I know. You help me with reading, and you know about dinosaurs, and you make Dad happy. Will you please marry us and be my family for real? Tears were already streaming down Lena's face. Max, I'm not done. He pulled a small bouquet of wildflowers from behind his back, slightly crushed, but clearly chosen with care. I picked these because Dad said you like wildflowers better than fancy roses, and because you said once that wildflowers are tough and beautiful and they grow where they want, like you. Lena took the flowers with shaking hands. Ethan opened the box, revealing a simple ring, elegant, understated, perfect. I'm not asking you to complete us, Ethan said quietly. We're already complete. I'm asking you to join us, to choose this family the way we're choosing you, to build something together that's ours, not traditional, not what anyone else expects, but real and lasting and exactly what we all need. Say yes, Max whispered loudly. Please say yes. Lena looked at Max, at his hopeful face and wild hair and the dinosaur shirt he'd insisted on wearing because it was his special occasion shirt. Then she looked at Ethan, at the man who'd stood beside her through her worst day and every day since, who'd never asked her to be anything other than herself, who'd shown her that family was about choosing and staying and showing up. Yes, she said, her voice breaking.
Yes to all of it. Yes to this family. Yes to building something real. Yes. Ethan slipped the ring on her finger while Max cheered loud enough to draw attention from every customer in the coffee shop. Then Ethan kissed her, and Max hugged both of them, and the terrible coffee shop with its yellow walls and cracked booths became the place where Lena's life transformed from surviving to thriving. The guy behind the counter, the same one from that first morning, started clapping, and soon the whole coffee shop joined in. Strangers celebrating a love story they knew nothing about except that it looked real and hard-won and worth celebrating. "Group hug," Max demanded, and they obliged. The three of them tangled together in the booth while Lena's wildflowers got crushed between them, and neither Ethan nor Lena cared at all. "Can we get pancakes now?" Max asked. "I feel like we should celebrate with pancakes." "Absolutely," Ethan said. "Biggest pancakes they have." They ordered food they barely touched because they were too busy talking, planning, laughing. Max wanted to know if this meant Lena would officially move in. Ethan wanted to know if she'd wear the ring or if it was too soon. Lena wanted to know how long they'd been planning this. 2 weeks, Ethan admitted. Max helped pick the ring. He said it had to be simple but special, because that's what you are. I also said it should have a dinosaur on it, but Dad said that wasn't appropriate for engagement rings, Max added. "Maybe we can get you a dinosaur ring for the wedding," Lena suggested. "We're having a wedding?" Max's eyes went wide. "With cake?" "Definitely with cake. And you can help plan it, all of it." "This is the best day of my whole life," Max announced. Later, after they'd exhausted the pancakes and coffee and celebratory energy, they walked back to the car. Max ran ahead, and Ethan pulled Lena close. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to ask for help that day. For giving us a chance. For choosing this family when you could have stayed safe and alone. Thank you for saying yes, for seeing me when I felt invisible, for making me believe I was enough exactly as I am." "You were always enough, Lena. I just helped you see what was already there." They drove to the park where they'd fed ducks that first Saturday together. Max ran ahead to check on Gerald the mean mallard, and Ethan and Lena sat on the same bench, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I need to tell you something," Lena said. "Something I've been scared to say." "Okay." "I can't give you biological children. I know you said it doesn't matter, and I believe you, but I need you to really understand what that means. It means if we want more kids, we adopt. It means Max won't have biological siblings from us. It means our family will be built on choice instead of chance," Ethan interrupted gently. "It means any children we add to this family will be wanted and chosen and loved deliberately. That's not a limitation, Lena. That's a gift." "You really mean that?" "I really mean that. And for the record, I've been thinking about adoption for a while. Max asks about siblings sometimes, and I've wondered if maybe in a year or two, when things are more settled, we could look into it. If you're interested." "I'm very interested." Lena turned to look at him. "Really?" "Really, but only when you're ready. There's no rush. Max is 7. He's got plenty of time to be a big brother if that's what he wants. And if it's not, that's okay too. We're enough as we are." "We're enough as we are," Lena repeated, letting the truth of it settle into her bones. Max came running back with news that Gerald had a girlfriend now and seemed much happier. "See?" he said triumphantly. "Everyone needs someone, even mean ducks." "Very philosophical, buddy," Ethan said. "What's philosophical mean?" "It means you're wise beyond your years." "Cool. Can we get ice cream?" They got ice cream despite the spring chill, and Max detailed his wedding planning ideas with the seriousness of a professional event coordinator. He wanted dinosaurs as a theme, obviously, and a chocolate fountain, and for everyone to wear sneakers because dress shoes were uncomfortable. "We'll take it under advisement," Ethan said diplomatically. 3 months later, on a warm July afternoon, they got married in the Boston Public Garden beside the pond where they'd fed ducks. It was small, just Maya, Ethan's mother, a few close friends, and Max, who served as best man and ring bearer and general master of ceremonies. Lena wore a simple dress that made her feel powerful instead of pretty. Ethan wore a suit but let Max talk him into sneakers as a compromise. Max wore his dinosaur shirt under a blazer, and declared it the perfect wedding outfit. There was no wedding party beyond Max, no elaborate venue or expensive flowers or performance of wealth. Just two people who'd found each other in a terrible coffee shop, choosing each other again in front of the people who mattered most. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Max raised his hand. I object to how long this is taking. Can we get to the part where they're married and we have cake? Everyone laughed, and the officiant expedited the proceedings. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Ethan kissed Lena like it was the first time and the 1,000th time all at once, and Max cheered and demanded his turn to hug them both. The reception was at a nearby restaurant, casual, comfortable, full of laughter and good food and toasts that made everyone cry. Maya gave a speech about how she'd watched her sister survive heartbreak and come out stronger. Ethan's mother talked about watching her son find happiness after years of struggling alone. Max stood on a chair and announced that his new mom was the best person ever, and could everyone please acknowledge that he'd helped pick the ring. As the sun set over the city, Lena found herself standing at the edge of the reception area, watching Ethan dance with Max to a song about dinosaurs that Max had specifically requested. "You look happy," Maya said, appearing beside her with champagne. "I am happy. Genuinely, completely happy." "Good. You deserve it." Maya clinked her glass against Lena's. "Here's to new beginnings and chosen family and the courage to ask strangers for help in coffee shops. Here's to second chances and mean ducks with girlfriends and little boys who believe in making everyone feel important. Here's to you, finally believing you're enough." Lena touched the family tree necklace she wore, the one Max had given her at Christmas, now joined by a wedding ring that symbolized choosing and being chosen. "I'm enough," she said, testing the words. "I'm exactly enough." And for the first time in her life, she believed it completely. Ethan caught her eye from across the room and held out his hand. Lena crossed to him, took his hand, let him pull her into the dance with Max between them. "Family group dance," Max announced, and they swayed together, all three of them, to music that was ridiculous and perfect. This was her family. Not the one she'd imagined when she was younger, not the one Charlotte West's speech had implied everyone should want, but the one she'd chosen and the one that had chosen her back, built on honesty and vulnerability and the radical act of showing up every single day. 6 months ago, Lena had walked into a terrible coffee shop, desperate and alone, convinced she needed someone to help her survive one day. Instead, she'd found two someones who'd helped her learn to thrive. A man who saw her worth before she did, and a boy who taught her that family was about staying, not biology. She'd asked for a fake boyfriend for 9 hours. She'd gotten a real family for a lifetime. And that, Lena thought, as Max stepped on her foot and Ethan laughed and the music played on, was more than enough. It was everything.